Welcome to the next Seven Stones podcast, where today I'm talking to Kieran Morland, who's the founder and chef at Sangkasa, Merah Putih, and a new project called Luma. You've reached the Seven Stones Indonesia podcast, where we talk with business people, entrepreneurs and influencers in Bali and Jakarta about business in Indonesia. They share their visions and insights with us in conversations around why they do what they do, which we hope will inspire you to believe you too can have a positive impact and make a difference. We hope you enjoy what they have to say, and if you do, please like, share and subscribe. We're really lucky actually that we've managed to find time for Kieran, because we know he's a busy man, especially opening up this new project in Luma. So let's get to it, Kieran. So tell me a little bit about how you got into the food industry in the first place.
I think I've been a lifer, like even at high school, I loved cooking, and all my job placements when you're at school were about going into restaurants. And as soon as I finished high school, straight away started in the restaurant industry in Melbourne.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, I worked in the Crown Casino at a restaurant called Chervo, so that was 17 years old. And that was pre-Gordon Ramsay days. I think it was before cooking was cool. I don't know if it's cool now.
You don't look that old.
I don't know if it's cool now, but yeah.
So it's kind of like a lifetime passion, really.
It's been a lifetime passion, yeah.
Right.
I feel like I don't know much else other than cooking, to be completely honest.
And what do you enjoy most about it?
So there's so many different facets, and I kind of love the whole thing. Like, obviously I just love the pure cooking part of it, like the joy of figuring out, you roast quail and you go, that's okay, I've figured, now I understand why it should be done like that, or you've got to cook it every time you cook something, and after you've done it for 30 years, you would hope that you're starting to get better and better and figuring out all those problems.
Do you ever get to a point where you don't get to a point where you're always learning about things, or could you almost do it blindfold? And
no, definitely always learning. And then there's so many different levels and so many.
Right. So
I've always cooked Western my whole life, and then when I moved to Bali, it was like Indonesian food. Hang on, this is a whole new thing. Nobody knows about all these dishes from Makassar, or all these dishes from Aceh, or a whole new world of cooking.
So why did you decide to come to Bali to build your brand? Essentially, it's your brand, right?
Yeah. So fluke, really. Like, I was working in New York at the time, and broke, because that's what happens when you work in restaurants in New York. Like, you get paid no money to work at really the good ones anyway. I don't know about but the good ones you get paid. And so basically a friend of mine, Ben Cross, he's the owner of Mason in Canggu. Okay. He basically said, come to Bali, just work at a restaurant called Cooter, or a beach club called Cooter. That was in 2009. And
was it your first experience in Bali, or have you been here before?
No, I've been in Bali about 5 or 6 times on holidays.
Okay.
But this was the first time that I actually saw the food. My perception of Bali was very different from originally. Because my sister lives in East Timor. So she studied in Semarang in the mid-90s, and then she moved to Timor in 2001, I think, and she's still living there now. So we used to come to Indonesia all the time, but we'd always go through via Bali. We'd start at Bali, go to Java, and then so yeah, that's pretty much.
So any specific challenges with Indonesian food versus Western food? Are you kind of fusing things?
Yeah, so my version of Indonesian food is fusion is a bit of a faux pas of a word in the hospitality industry, but to be completely fair, that's kind of what it is. The whole idea for me is to try and keep the flavours traditional, but just modern cooking techniques, using high quality ingredients and respect to the ingredient, and not overcooking things, making sure everything's cooked perfectly, the right balance. But yeah, I think this is the reason where it all started, because before Merah Putih there wasn't really a high-end Indonesian restaurant in Bali. maybe like Madei's Warung was the one,
Okay.
but not there's not one where you say, oh, I'll buy a bottle of wine, $100 bottle of wine, or
Right.
I feel like I'll have this beef rendang but made with Wagyu beef, and that's just a boring thing to say, but that's kind of what it kind of means,
Right.
you know. Traditional flavors, and also if I do a dish from Sulawesi, it'll be a dish from Sulawesi, so there's not going to be rendang sauce with woku this, and it's not a mix. It's a Sulawesi dish, but there'll be my modern interpretation of that dish, and the same deal with each.
How does that go down? I mean, it obviously works to a degree because you've got here Sangkasa, you've got Merah Putih. Sansaka.
Yeah.
Merah Putih was the first one, I take it. Then Sansaka.
Yeah. Merah Putih is the big one.
And next is Luma.
Yeah.
So how does that go down in terms of a market mix? You're getting Indonesians, or you're getting Westerners, or are you getting a mix of both? And are they kind of all appreciating the same kind of aspects to it?
So this has changed a lot over the last 12 years. So when we opened Merah Putih, I feel like Western tourists absolutely dug it. They loved it.
Right.
Expats thought, why are you charging me too much money when I can get nasi campur down the street?
Right.
And Indonesians, in my personal opinion, this isn't everybody. Some people really liked it, but quite a few people were like, you're not nailing the flavor profile. You know, it's Indonesian food a la bule.
Right.
And I think that my wife's a super talented cook, and her mum has restaurants in Surabaya, and I just think over the last 10 years I'm getting the Indonesians to also go, mate, you're on it, like the food's tasting traditional. I hope I'm doing that. And then number two, I think the Indonesians palate, or they're starting to appreciate this modern Indonesian cookery where it wasn't so appreciated 10, 12 years ago. So I think that could be because of things like Renato Maluk with MasterChef and top chefs, Indonesian chefs like Maximilian and Juno. They're kind of championing Indonesian food as being, this is just as good as French food or Italian food. Yeah. And you can go to a fancy Indonesian restaurant. Just because you go to a fancy restaurant doesn't mean it should have truffles or foie gras, or, you know, what's wrong with buah kluwak or andaliman pepper, or, you know, gindada fruit from Maluku. Super unique ingredients. You can't find them anywhere else in the world. Treat those as that's the truffle of Indonesia.
Right. So you just rolled off a bunch of names there of Indonesian chefs and cooking shows and things. So who's been your greatest inspiration for chefing?
My wife's mum, maybe. If that's, to be completely honest, probably my wife's mum. Yeah. So that's Indonesian food, right? But you mean the Western world?
Yeah.
So. I work with a guy named Cam Emirali, he is the guy I'm doing this project with at Luma now. So he owns 10 Greek Street, 8 Hoxton Square in London, and he's a super talented chef. And I think he was one of the first guys that showed me it doesn't need to be fine dining.
Right. But
you have to come with it with the mindset, you know, every single thing must be meticulous, but then presentation can be just boom, 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 you know. Right. So it's not Gordon Ramsay molecular foam, any of that sort of stuff, but it is that sort of attention to detail. Right. The best potato you can get when you make mash, the best pigeons that have been farmed from here, and you know. And then I work for a place in New York called Momofuku. David Chang, he's a pretty famous Netflix sort of dude, Ugly Delicious, and Christina Tosi was the pastry chef, so that was a bit of a movement in New York at the time. Modern Korean, basically, he was doing. I liked a lot of things that he did. He was a bit of an arsehole, but I think he's a super talented chef. Is that you're not allowed to say that on this podcast?
We can say whatever we want. So if we go back to kind of the business side to it a little bit, because one of the things we want to do with this sort of podcast is to kind of share insights from movers and shakers in business to be able to kind of encourage entrepreneurs to, you know, go out on a limb maybe and follow their passion about what it is that turns them on, I guess. So with your restaurants, Merah Putih, Sangkasa, and the upcoming Luma, is there a common theme that connects them together, and what's the business strategy behind opening up, you know, those three places actually quite close to each other, right?
Yeah.
It's not like one's in the north of Bali and one's down in the Bukit. They're all kind of close to each other.
That's true, yeah.
So what's the strategy behind that from a business perspective?
Okay, so Merah Putih is the original one. That was the first thing, and that is 200-seat restaurant. So that's high volume. It's got this crazy roof. When it rains, all the water comes through the roof, and then we collect the water, and it's all sort of green. And I love that place, but it's because it's so busy. You're doing 250, 300 covers a night. You're losing the love a little bit. It turns it into a food factory. We've got a team of 30 staff, and all I'm doing is kind of yelling at people rather than cooking.
Right.
So that was great. I love that thing. You know, that helped me be reasonably successful. But my passion is cooking food.
So you're actually a hands-on owner. So you're in the kitchen in your chef whites.
Big time.
And making it all happen.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the reason I opened Sangkasa. Purely because I wanted to be the guy who's grilling that piece of fish or cooking that, you know, pigeon breast or whatever it happened to be. I want to be that guy cooking, and that's what Sangkasa. So then Sangkasa was kind of a passion project rather than a money project. Everything's cooked over fire, so it's kind of a little bit more, you know, like let's just say Satay Ayam. It's cooked using charcoal, coconut charcoal or coconut husk. So we just take that dish and we kind of unpack it, but I don't mean deconstruct, but I just mean using a really good quality piece of quail, and we just cook it properly, roast it off the bone, but still have all the good things that you like about Satay Ayam, where it's all the little burnt bits and that really good traditional peanut sauce, or if it's from Madura, you know, the certain way that they do the sauce with shallots, and so that was Sangkasa, which is right next to Merah Putih.
Is it?
So Merah Putih is just next to the W Hotel on Jalan Pedik
Oh, wow, that's really close.
Yeah, and Sangkasa is just down in Pangkung Sari. So it's about 300 meters away. The reason why Merah Putih is so big and busy, this was like the little intimate one. So some people like the razzle dazzle and this beautiful high ceilings and everything, and then some people just like having a little intimate dinner. So I think
different menus though.
Completely different menu. Yeah, different food, but still both modern Indonesian.
Okay.
I think Sangkasa would be a little bit more attention to detail with the food at Sangkasa. And then Luma, this is my friend Cam, who's moved to Bali with me, and we're setting up. It's going to be like a modern European style restaurant because he owns restaurants in London.
Right.
So it's going to be his style of food. We're going to do it together.
Okay.
But using the ingredients that you can find unique to Bali and Indonesia. So for example, you can't get artichokes in Bali, but you can use banana blossom, and if you braise them and you cook them the way that you would cook an artichoke, it tastes just like an artichoke. Wow. You know, there's a million of those things. This is the idea, but we don't want it to be too
fancy.
Yeah, too fancy. This new one is going to be less fancy than what I've been doing lately. Very relaxed.
Do you see then that there's almost like an evolution going on from Merah Putih to Sangkasa, and then it's kind of culminating in Luma, where you've learned a whole bunch of stuff to kind of get to, not necessarily saying that the pinnacle of it, the peak of it, but certainly progressing. Do you see that? Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I think that you just see it. So as chefs get older, it seems like their food lots of people just gets much more pared back, much more simple, not trying to be too fancy, and just the sort of food I like to eat is a really good piece of fish, or a really just well cooked piece roast chicken, or a really good piece of beef or something. Doesn't have to be too fancy. something that I can eat every day. So I want Luma to feel like you could go there 3 times a week. We change the menu every day.
Oh wow!
So it would be just I've got 4 or 5 fish suppliers, and they text me at say 11 at night or at 6 in the morning, when they finish fishing, and say we've got this, and then you just choose what fish you want.
Seriously, and then
it goes on the next day.
Then you get your fish, and then you make the menu.
And then you make the menu. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's all from the 10 Greek Street ethos of just making, or you're just winging it basically. There's a system. It's not like you just randomly wake up and go, oh, what are we going to do today? But,
eggs again.
Yeah. But especially things like seafood, because if they say to me these clams are absolutely stunning, why shouldn't I use those rather than go, oh yeah, but I've got prawns on my menu, so I'm going to use mediocre prawns because I know that I've got them and I don't want to change that little piece of paper. Yeah. But that's what.
So from your experience, which is it's over a decade that you've been doing this in Bali.
Bali, yeah.
So you started in 2009 or
2009 at Cooter. Yeah. 2011 was Merah Putih. We opened. Yeah. And then Merah Putih's closed at the moment because of COVID. It's such a big venue. So all the Matisse, Sarong, Sardine, Barbacoa, Merah Putih, all those big 200-seat restaurants have all been closed since COVID. So only the really little things that survive that can pivot.
Which is actually that's kind of that I think from a business perspective that's kind of interesting because if you were to give some advice to somebody that wanted to set up an F&B business in Bali, a restaurant or a bar or something like that in Bali, in this current situation, what advice would you give them? And I'm guessing it would be something like, don't make it too big.
Yeah, don't make it too big would be the good one. But in saying that, those restaurants have made millions of dollars over the past decade.
Right.
The little ones haven't.
Right.
So there's just if Bali comes back to where we think it will come back, those restaurants work.
Yeah.
But little restaurants like this, I think, is the way forward. The good thing about Bali is you don't get nailed on because most things are a bit cheaper. You've got a bit of a chance with wage costs, with rent costs.
Right.
Whereas in Australia or Europe or America, you kind of need to go bang straight away.
Right.
Whereas I feel like in Bali, they give you a bit of a head start because you've got you've got a chance to make it work. I think Bali's a great place to set up a business, but don't come here if you're in finance and set up a restaurant and think that's going to work. Or don't come here if you liked your mum's meatballs one day and you think that it's gone are those days of just setting up a restaurant when you don't have experience and just wing it and work.
So you're saying you do have to be knowledgeable in your art.
Yeah. If you're in hospitality, then you can definitely make it work. But if a guy came to me last night and he goes, I really need your help. I just opened a restaurant in Canggu. I actually never done hospitality before and I don't really know what I'm doing. So how's your chef? What's he like? And he's like, he's not very good. And your manager? No, he's not very good either. Well, all right, well you're in a bit of trouble, aren't you? How do you want me to help you? Right. I don't know. I think it's like
so as well as premium prime ingredients. Would you argue then that you'd also kind of need to complement that somehow or balance that somehow with the guys that are actually working and cooking the food? They've also got to be of a particular level? Sure,
yeah, that's why I think I love the Balinese staff because they're just like sponges and if you tell them a way, they'll do that way. As long as you're there to guide and, but just if you don't teach them properly, you just won't ever get that sort of And then if you're angry at them because they're not cooking the chicken right,
Yeah.
you need to be there 10 times. That's how, remember, it's got to be cooked like this, you've got to cook like this, and they'll get it.
Yeah.
And then they'll work for you forever too. That's if you treat people with respect.
Well, they're also going to kind of sponge your passion for it too, right? So if you're like a hands-on owner and they can see you, sweating away over a grill or something like that, and really showing love for the things that you're doing, for the food and for the way it's presented and the tastes and the flavours, then they're going to get that vibe, right? They're going to feel that too.
Yeah, definitely. You're right. And then you get, if you treat people with that sort of respect and they can see that you're super passionate about it, and you get upset if they overcook a mushroom and it goes out onto a plate, they're not going to do it again, and then that's all just good, and they're learning. They're like, I get it. You're
not like a control freak, though. Or are you?
No. I mean, that is the whole balancing act, isn't it? There's the act of you want it to be perfect, but you don't want to be that asshole.
Yeah.
You don't want to be that cat the perception of Gordon Ramsay, right? That's what everybody knows is this. Where's the lamb sauce?
Yeah.
You don't really want to be that guy,
right?
But sometimes you kind of need to be.
You can't avoid it, right?
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, But gone are the days of those sort of screaming at people.
Yeah.
I think that doesn't get the best out of people. So always try and give them a cuddle up.
It's interesting because in your time here, you must have seen this development of the F&B industry in Bali, to the point now where you see a lot of references to Bali becoming like a foodie capital, if you like, a foodie centre. It attracts people for all the right reasons to do with delicious food. I think people might see that and think, okay, that's a good opportunity for me to make money, for me to make a business. So would you sort of predict more and more people wanting to open F&B businesses here? Is the first part of the question. The second part of the question would be, how many of those are going to fail because of what we've just been talking about? Maybe the venue's too large, or the passion's not there, or they're using inferior ingredients and they're just trying to factory it through.
Yeah, so a lot to unpack in that question, right? But because Bali, about 10 years ago, there was 2 or 3 restaurants that were kind of doing good, like, if you were talking about high-end restaurants, there was, so like Sarong, Chris Allen's Mosaic, Dudu and Saeed at Matisse, or where were they fought before that, Warasan. Now there's some real, like, those guys are also very good, but now there's 50 of those people. There's Locavore, that's been in the top 50 restaurants in Asia. Will Goldfarb just got voted world's best pastry chef from Ubud. There's many. I could just keep going. We don't want to bore you with all the talent. So I think there's just more and more talent. And back when I worked at Cooter, there, I feel like there was just a handful of people, and there was this, I remember getting a handover and they're saying the fruit's not very good, the vegetables, we import all the vegetables from Australia because of this, and $60 a kilo for parsnips. I'm like, parsnip? Who wants to eat a parsnip for $60 a kilo in Bali? Like, why don't we use the fern tips or figure it out with the millions of beautiful ingredients that taste delicious. Maybe the strawberries aren't that good because they were never supposed to be grown here, probably, and they're getting better and better as better farmers. So there's like Owen from Novio. There's a lot of farmers that are doing it properly, and no pesticides, and making things taste good.
That's actually a really interesting point, because you mentioned all these names of quite famous guys and internationally recognised for their craft and their talent and things. Do you feel that it's almost like it feeds itself. So
Yeah.
so you've got a good group of talented people that need quality this
Yeah.
and quality that, and so you then get this peripheral industry going on of supporting
Yeah.
the good guys that are
Big
doing.
time.
Yeah.
100%. It's all the snowball effect.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? We needed Chris Sallen's the pioneer to say, hey, ginger flower. Anyone ever heard of this before? You know, or you know, all these ingredients that he did the real hard yards, and then people have just, everyone's piggybacked and brought in new things and learned from and used what's been already learned in Bali before, and then brought their own, and now there's this really good thriving community
Yeah.
of good quality operators, and it's just going to get better and better. So I would assume if like some great chef from Singapore came to Bali now, he'd be able to do much better things than he could 10 years ago.
Right.
You know, he would enjoy it much more. There's been a knock. Since I've been here, there's always been a knock on the produce not being that good.
Right.
But that's not true. Like, yes, the seafood, it's warm water, so it's never going to be as good as, those, Scotland or the bottom of Australia in that regard. But then there's so many beautiful fish, and there's people that are really treating them properly now, like ikejime killed, so the Japanese way where it suffers less, and it's a brain spike basically, or gone are the days where people are catching fish, throwing it on a boat, and then you get it, and it's like, it just feels like it's a 4-day-old shitty fish being
Could well have been,
yeah, it probably had been, or it's been sitting in the sun all day. These guys are really treating it as the way it should be,
right.
because they know that they can make more money if they treat it that way. You know? And I'd much rather pay $16 a kilo for a piece of coral trout that I know exactly when it was caught, and I know when it comes to the restaurant, it's stiff as a board, like it's just come out of the ocean, slimy,
right.
beautiful clear eyes, gills amazing, compared to $12 a kilo for something that's all floppy and flabby, and who knows what it's turned up on a motorbike, like it's, yeah. Some guy had it in his pocket on the way for a while.
So the future of the F&B industry in Bali is bright, you see?
I think so.
That?
I think so, yeah. I think that what just happened has been super tragic. Like, it hasn't been good. It has just gotten rid of so many people that would have just said it's way too hard.
Right.
So there's a real place for new operators to come in, but I'm hoping that they'll be good operators. You're going to get some dodgy people, but the ones that make it work for years and years are going to be the good operators, I think, and that's a good thing. I don't know what's good, like, it seems like everyone's going to Canggu or Perenninan or Sese. So then what happens to Cooter? Is that going to be gentrified, and then all of a sudden that'll be cool again?
Yeah.
Like East London, when I was in East London, it was such a divey venue. Now it's the coolest place in town. In New York, Brooklyn was so horrible, but now it's the most beautiful place in town.
So in terms of destinations and things, if somebody was to, they're listening to this podcast and they say, okay, well, I'm kind of getting the vibe from Kieran here, I can tick these boxes, I've got this, I've done that, I've got this passion. Where would you recommend them to have a go? Would it still be in this area of Seminyak?
So, good question. I think Seminyak's got life. There's a lot of restaurants that have closed down, but ultimately W Hotel, Alila, the Legian, Samaya, all those luxury hotels are all on that street of Pedicanga.
Yeah.
So that's where the nicest hotels are. I mean, there's Nusa Dua. There's not that many good restaurants in Nusa Dua. That would be a real risk.
Would that be a no-no?
For me, I would say that's a risk. Yeah,
okay.
Seminyak is a good one, but will Seminyak become sort of the old Cooter where it's all party and young kids, and in 5 years? That's one of the. Whereas Canggu, everyone's moving to Canggu, but it's a real pain in the ass to get there.
Yeah.
Like it's so holiday makers that come to Bali, I think a lot of them want to just have an easy holiday. They don't want to be sat in traffic
Sure.
for 2 hours.
So would Cooter be an option?
So, I mean, I wouldn't be want to be the first guy in.
Okay.
But if this was happening, if there was like 2 or 3 cool little places and they started to gentrify that area, I think, yeah, that would be amazing. Because you get off at the beaches are still beautiful.
Yeah.
You get off from the airport, it's a 5-minute taxi ride to the thing, and then you're there. But if it was right now today, I'd say Canggu or Seminyak is where you should be setting up.
So have you got any plans to grow beyond Bali, or is this where you're at? I mean, I hear there's a lot of buzz around Labuan Bajo and Flores and things. Would you consider going east?
I love Flores. Labuan Bajo is beautiful. I love that hill.
Right.
When you're up the hill, it kind of almost feels like you're in the sort of Mediterranean, Greek islands sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I love that, and it's come along so far.
Yeah,
since,
very fast.
Since in the last 10 years. Yeah, my sister went there in 1992, and she was like, it's just desolate. Sort of, there was nothing there. I went there last month. I thought it was unbelievably beautiful.
So you consider something there?
Yep.
What about west? Would you consider Java? Surabaya? No, you don't go to Surabaya because then you're going to compete with your mother-in-law, right? You don't want to do that.
That's a good point. I love Surabaya, but I wouldn't want to open a restaurant there. I just want to go there and have satay kelapa and rawon and...
Because Jakarta's got a great F&B scene too,
Yeah, Jakarta's good. We got offered things in Jakarta early days of Merah Putih, and I was always very scared. Maybe this new concept Luma to go in Jakarta. I think Sangkasa and Merah Putih are a little bit Indonesian food, but for tourists style. There's that. That's our bread and butter. Whereas if I'm not there every day, because the good thing about being so close to each other, I can start at Merah Putih, 10 minutes later I'm in the kitchen of Sangkasa and then drive to Luma, so I could just make sure that everything's happening roughly correctly every night. Whereas Jakarta, I've got no idea what's going on, so it would be scary. I'd have to have a really good team that I could trust and that would go good. But yeah, maybe the Luma concept might work. Never say never. Don't want to spread myself too thin either.
Yeah, really.
So it could all, sometimes, the empire just comes crumbling down when there's no one, cracking the whip or at least being there. And,
Wait, so when are you expecting Luma to be open?
1 month, I think.
1 month from now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Originally it was supposed to be before Idul Fitri. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but they are working 24 hours a day there. I was just there this morning and they were going crazy. It was so it's looking good. It's got this really funky floor where it's all big pieces of marble, and then it's set in terrazzo, and it looks like a cobblestone floor. Quite interesting.
Very nice. Very nice.
Interesting, yeah.
Well, we wish you all the best with it, Kieran. I've actually eaten here before. I've never eaten in Merah Putih yet. But by reputation, you have a very good reputation with your food and stuff. So we wish you all the best with Luma.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you very much for your time today, because we know you're a busy guy.
All good.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that.
Thank you very much.